Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another magnificent, I said exciting last time, magnificent broadcast of Heavy Revy TV. Good morning, Kathy, and those that are going to be joining us. We appreciate you. We love you. And this is my wonderful wife, Shauna, if you haven't already known. I'm Brian, and we're excited because we're going to be talking about consciousness again today. And, the concept of consciousness, or shall I say the reality of consciousness compared to the concept of consciousness, the concept that we've been defined and over-defined for generations um, hasn't really explained consciousness. And so this is a hard subject because nobody really knows the depths of what it is. We can only kind of talk about what it does and give examples of that because very rarely are we actually conscious of consciousness, if I can put it that way. But we're going to try to talk about a little bit about consciousness today. And Annabelle, good morning, my light beings. Amen. Good morning. And so let me just read what I put above the video, or actually on my.
That was last time.
Oh, wait, that's the last one? Oh, wow. No wonder it didn't show up right. Okay. Let me just share what I wrote about this video here. Consciousness has been a mystery to mankind for thousands of years. We are not observing the universe. Okay, that's a big one right there. Consciousness is where you really realize you're no longer gauging everything external from you as though separate from you.
Right.
All right. So we are not observing the universe. We are the universe observing itself. Okay, this is something we have to understand. Now, that might seem really spooky and out there, but hey, this is the way it is. You are the essence behind your own thoughts. I think that once we can kind of get to that, that's where we start to discern intentions. That's where we kind of go into discerning one's motives and being able to understand the why behind the what. You are the essence behind the thought. To understand consciousness, one must awaken beyond their thoughts and labels. All right, this is something that's really important. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like in life. And really, I tend to think that discernment, which is what has been taught and retaught and taught wrong, where, we're taught to discern things. Jesus he knew their hearts. Okay. How did he know their hearts? By knowing his own heart. Okay. We don't know somebody else's heart if we don't know our own heart. And if we don't know our own heart and we suppose we know our heart and know somebody else's heart, we will be what? Suspicious, not discerning. And so looking beyond that and getting into the place in which our ability to read between the lines and discern intentions and discern from the right heart in what you're viewing and perceiving all begins with realizing that consciousness begins with oneness. Okay. And I got a gnat in here. So I better not strain at a gnat or swallow a camel today. And so, so consciousness really isn't this mystical thing.
Thank you. Yes.
So we want to kind of demystify consciousness because we can meditate and we can have spiritual experiences and we can be like, wow, I experienced that and still not be conscious. Okay. There's a lot of people that have a lot of awesome spiritual experiences, myself included, that for years, everything I encountered, I was viewing through an unconscious state and trying to apply it.
Which is
ego. Okay. It's me. Finally, I got what I prayed for. Finally, God's doing his thing. It's about time, God. Everybody else has been seen but me, right? And so sometimes it's from the intentions that we're seeking to wake up. It's from a place of keeping up with the Joneses, looking good, not feeling like you're left out. These are the things that are unconscious. These are the things that keep us from consciousness, are these elements beneath that are driven out of, historical woundedness and these types of things. Let me just take a moment and greet everybody. Barbara, it's good to see you. It's good to see Amjad there. It's good to see Pastor John, Lisa. It's good to see you. We got several on here today. And just greetings. Greetings. John and Annabelle, we love you guys. You guys are amazing. Erica, bless you. And so we just want to welcome you again. And so, when we're dealing with consciousness, we've got to understand there's going to be consciousness at multiple levels. And there's going to be consciousness that is directed, okay? Directed in the way in which we perceive one another. It's one thing to be able to share all the mysteries of the universe and the eternal now and talk about that. But if I cannot be conscious of who my wife is in the midst of that, and be able to reciprocate what I've encountered in the universe or, in that eternal now experience, then I wasn't conscious when I encountered the heavenly realms or eternity. So again, you can have all kinds of visions, revelations, encounters, and not be conscious. These are helping you on your journey of consciousness, but it doesn't necessarily mean you are conscious, because consciousness is going to have a byproduct or a fruit that comes out of what has been beheld and realized that is now reciprocated with everyone you come into contact with. And I think that's where we really start to see consciousness mature. Hey, Robert, good to see you. Julie, bless you. And so what do you think, honey, about some of these things that I'm sharing on consciousness? What's your experience of it, and what do you think?
I think the big thing, we were getting on here and I'm like, consciousness? I'm like, the concept itself of trying to understand it, I think I just had to let go of, because that's just ego trying to understand even consciousness.
Yes.
So I was like, forget it. We'll just go with the flow and just see what it is. And then, so I think it's, like demystifying the whole trying to understand consciousness. It's who you are. It's your essence. And I love that, because we think sometimes that our thoughts are who we are. Yeah. And we're trying to now battle our thoughts or deal with our thoughts. And really, that's just ego.
Yeah.
But who we are, the essence of who we are, is consciousness. When you wake up to those moments of being at complete peace with who you are.
Yes.
And I think we have those glimpses and we come in and out of that awareness, but consciousness just is.
It just is.
It's not bad or good. It just is. And so yesterday, actually, I think we've been hearing a lot of people who are kind of waking up and kind of just talking about being in the moment. And you cannot overthink being in the moment.
No, in fact, if you have a thought, you're not in the moment.
Yes, exactly. And so being in the moment, I think, is consciousness. Yeah. And I was really thinking about that yesterday. I was having some coffee by myself and it was really, really quiet, or may have been a couple of days ago. I think it was yesterday. And I'm just sitting there. And my dog, my little puppy, was just snuggling with me. And then in a moment, he went and grabbed his toy and was like shaking his little butt, ready to just play. And all of a sudden, I just became aware of that he wants to play.
Yes.
And I don't know what it did, but it did something in me of just being in the moment and stop trying to figure things out. And so
I was aware of awareness.
I was aware of awareness, if that makes any sense. I was just aware of just being aware. And I just played with him for a couple of minutes, and it was kind of like, just be.
Yes.
And I was looking up quotes and things of kind of to express what I was experiencing or being aware of. And I wanted to share it. It was, being present means being completely aware of all that is.
Yes.
It means you're not in denial, you're not pretending, and you're not avoiding. And that really hit me, because that also means you're not figuring out, you're not trying to do something to be something. Yeah. You're just aware of it. And I think, again, there is no positive or negative emotions or even thoughts. It's what we conclude on them. And so conclusion takes you out of the present moment, or the conscious awareness of what is. And so I think we're all, if you're watching this, you're probably on that same journey of trying to just be in the moment, being more aware. And I think you have to kind of be drawn into it.
Yes.
And it's not something you can even perform in. And you can't even conceptualize it. It's an experience.
Yes.
So consciousness is an experience that we are all waking up to.
And we are consciousness.
Yes, it's who we are.
Yeah. I mean, when you think of conclusion, which is really illusion. All right. So the way the ego works is the ego secures itself. In other words, the ego will feel insecure if it cannot conclude based on past data.
Right.
Okay. Kind of like if you become aware of the now in consciousness, the moment you have a thought about the now, you are actually no longer in the now, but thinking about where you were a moment ago. And it's now a conclusion of the now, which is not consciousness. Okay. It's an evaluation of what you were conscious of, which most of the time our evaluation is what muddles the waters of reality in the way in which we perceive.
Yeah.
Now, you don't want to go in extreme in this. We're all still dealing with, memory. Okay. So we're not saying at this point, don't have memory, but the more conscious you become, the less you rely on memory to gauge your present or your future. And the more you rely on a knowing through observation rather than through, trying to find an answer or trying to figure out. I think a lot for me was for years, I've been one that has always looked for the answers. Okay. Always looked for the answers, always tried to understand. And a lot of times my heart intention was to see other people get the answer. Nothing wrong with that, right? Nothing wrong with people getting the answer. We're giving answers today in degrees. Okay. So there's definitely a place for that. But in those early days, it was really out of a place in which I was insecure that I wasn't enough, that I wasn't equal, that I wasn't as smart as those around me or as anointed as those around me. And so, most of the time we don't see what's driving us to have an answer, to understand. And so wherever conclusion comes in, where we become dogmatic, where it's just, this is it, we build that box. I can assure you that becomes the proof that everything that was sought out was not conscious. It was moving on memory. And so if you can see how your mind works, your ego is not a bad thing. It's just the ego that is displaced and unrenewed. Because the ego is also the seat of your personality. Ego isn't just egotistical. Ego is the seat of your personality in your humanity. Okay, it's your diversity that is seated on the essence of who you are as consciousness. Okay, and so as we journey through this, our ego, in the beginning of this, our ego can only hold on to thoughts, conclusions, what it has designed in the lens, in the way in which it has concluded upon life with labels, with do's and don'ts, with goods and bads, with, these types of things, measuring rods, measuring sticks. Okay. Anything that you measure is going to have a positive and a negative, because measurements is based in time and time is based in memory. Okay. And ego uses memory to discern. All right. And I know this might sound a little deep and all, but just bear with me here. All right. So now when the ego is subject to reality, now I know that's a broad word. What is reality? And I think that becomes the big question. Reality is whatever you believe. And it will be your reality, whether it is or isn't. Okay. This is why we have all kinds of different perspectives, is because people have concluded on their reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think consciousness is to kind of take the conclusion off reality and look beyond what was once concluded upon, and no longer think about it, but simply experience it, without thought, without conclusion. And now, how do we get there? Well, I think we've shared this a lot. It's all the stuff that backfires. One of the big things is all the backfires in our life. All the things that we wish didn't happen in our life, a lot of times is the catalyst to slap that mindset and bring it subject to bearing witness outside of thoughts that are directly connected to memories, that are directly connected to conclusion, and are viewed through the lens of ego. What do you think, honey?
It's interesting because I was talking to some friends today, and we were talking about the concept of, or the experience of, rejection, and how I think we all have experienced rejection at some point in our lives. And for some, it's been a constant theme of rejection. But as we were talking about it, I said, in reality, when you get to, I guess, in the sense, the realization of rejection, you realize you were never really rejected.
Yes.
The people that were projecting rejection were either trying to find themselves or figure out themselves, or just not interested in what you were representing or whatever.
Yes.
So if somebody doesn't accept you, or doesn't want to take what you are giving, which sometimes that in itself can feel rejected. I'm rejected because they don't receive what I'm trying to offer them.
And that's when you're relying on past conclusive
yes.
thoughts through the
and
ego.
So as we were talking about that, it really started to make sense. And having walked through a lot of rejection in my life, and now I can see, kind of hindsight, look back and say, oh, wow, I was never really, me who I am was never rejected. And honestly, if I felt like I was, it was all needed to be in the place where I am now, to where I'm no longer believe that rejection is who I am, if that makes sense.
So you had to get an epiphany at some point.
Right. And we do.
Yes.
And so we use all of it to bring us to that awareness of actually who we really are. And so my friend Crystal was saying, basically, we needed to be rejected. We need rejection to go in the right direction. And so all of it that we can deem as bad has all led us to where we are. And so whether it's rejection, not being validated, not being heard, not being seen, all of these things have all led us to a place of an awakening.
Yes.
And waking up to consciousness, which is our essence of who we really are.
Yes.
And again, yes, we're going in and out of that because of this 3D realm of dimension of separation, but it still isn't who you are.
Yes.
You are so much more than what you have experienced here.
Yes, exactly. See, and you mentioned the 3D realm, and I want to say what Nico said here because it's pretty powerful. I'm going to put that up here. It says they were living by consciousness, and consciousness was telling the observer as a chatter in the head saying, you are rejected. Voice of consciousness. Haha. Very true. Very, very true and very powerful, because when you're truly conscious, you are beside yourself, and you begin to observe the human experience and the human reaction almost as though it isn't you, and you are simply observing what you thought was you, thinking and interacting. So in a sense, you are beside yourself. What does it say in Proverbs? He that gives the right answer kisses his own lips. But back to what you were saying, in this third dimensional thing, we don't, here's the thing, we don't live in a third dimension, we think a third dimension.
Oh, that's good.
Okay. And I think that once we went from thinking a third dimension to accepting it as our reality, that is where we really begin to become entangled. Like the scripture calls it, entanglement with the cares of this life. In the world, you have tribulation, right? And so this is the world of our conclusion, the world of our belief system. It's kind of like, what were you meant to think thoughts? And ultimately, even though we have thoughts and everything that we have journeyed through is part of the process of unveiling, remembering, becoming conscious. Consciousness is a remembrance. So I don't want to say we shouldn't think thoughts, because we all have.
And you can't not think thoughts.
But we are coming to the place
yes.
to where we do not rely on the thinking of thoughts. And it's kind of like if you were to watch the clouds, go by in the sky. Mm-hmm. And you're just observing them. You're not defining them. You're just observing them. This is where consciousness comes in. Thinking a thought is actually me, again, relying on an egoic foundation rather than observation, allowing for the download of reality to be revealed in the midst of what has been observed. So observation is just the beginning of that, because really it's the beginning and the end. But in the midst of the beginning and end of observation, or the absence of thought, or taking no thoughts for your life, what that does is all of a sudden everything you need becomes plain. Everything you need to do, decisions that need to be made, directions you need to go, things that you couldn't see that now all of a sudden become evident, comes in the absence of thought. It comes in observation form, and it's an automatic response. Like when we read in the scriptures, seek first the kingdom of God and everything else is added to you. Okay. All right. And so seeking first is to behold, to embrace, to gaze, and to look for that which is love. It really is. I mean, do we have, if there is any conclusion, now that conclusion obviously can't have a definition of love, as in a human definition. I mean, all of us would say, this is what love is to me. This is what love is to you. But how much of that falls short of what love really is sometimes, right? Especially
usually based on experience.
Yeah, because most of our definitions are based on opinions and conclusions rather than observations. And I don't mean observations of us observing, because you can observe through the ego too. You can say, oh, I'm observing now, and I just don't like that person. Okay. Well, that ain't observation.
Right.
Observation has already seen the full potential of that person, and whether they attain it or not, or wake up to it or not, you are engaging with them from a place of their full potential and who they truly are in the essence of their being, rather than what they can measure up to, in a visible human experience,
Yes.
And so this is something that I think, as we kind of begin to settle into this season right now, this emphasis right now of awareness, and man, I'm starting to feel a realm break open of that awareness and consciousness. You feeling that? There's this realm coming behind me, or I know it's from within me, but it's all behind me right now.
It's an echo.
It's an echo. As we begin to really just, love yourself, I really think that consciousness doesn't begin with you looking outwardly, but consciousness begins with you looking inwardly. Do you want to kind of share a little bit about how do you look inwardly, honey?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that, like how I process things. You are like an observer of a conversation that's happening all within you. Let's say something happens that I don't necessarily like. I'm immediately, I'm aware of my thoughts and feelings and emotions that are happening. That doesn't mean I conclude on them. So right now I am feeling hurt by someone's actions. What am I believing about myself? Oh, I'm believing that I'm not validated or heard. I'm aware of what the thoughts and feelings and emotions, but I'm not concluding that that's who I am in that moment. And I'm also not concluding on the other person.
So you're aware of your ego's conclusion.
Right. Yeah. Trying to attach it to experience and memories.
Yes.
But if you just observe and aware, and that means you're not denying what you're feeling.
Yes.
I think we got to realize that, yes, we have thoughts and they don't have to be bad. I see everything as a signpost. It's helping you to become aware that something is going on. And so if we can just take it as it is and not conclude on it, then we can just, again, be aware of actually who we really are in the midst of it.
Yes.
So, and this doesn't happen over time. I mean, it doesn't happen like overnight. This takes time and practice. I mean, and at first it feels like performance, but in reality, it is being conscious.
Yes.
So it's funny. We were laughing before we even came on because we're like, we've kind of been talking about consciousness without using the word consciousness. So it's kind of funny, but I think it's becoming a new kind of buzzword that is important to kind of define or figure out what it really is or isn't. And I think it's kind of fun to play with. But ultimately, in this process of going within, you are observing everything and everyone and not concluding on it and letting it just be. And then what happens is all of a sudden once you become aware of it, for me now, once I become aware that, oh, this is my conclusion, it just goes away.
Yes.
And I don't have to do anything. It just shifts.
Yes.
And I know some people.
No, in the beginning it didn't do that.
No, it didn't. In the beginning, it was like a tug of war.
But the tug of war is what loosened it up.
Yes.
Yeah.
You almost, again, this kind of battle in our own thoughts and minds, but it's all a beautiful process. I know it doesn't feel like it when you're in it and you feel like you're surviving. Eventually, you realize you have been thriving the whole time because you are who you are through everything that you're experiencing. So it's all to wake us up to who we are.
So that's beautiful right there. Not to change the subject here, but I just wanted to let people know that Nico Morales, which is an amazing brother, is having a webinar today on identity and consciousness. And so if you guys are available, I know unfortunately we are going to be out after this video, so we won't be able to come on. But I want to catch the replay on that. But anybody, if you are interested, in 2.5 hours from now, those that are watching live, go check out this webinar.
Reach out to Nico,
because Nico is awesome and carries a lot of keys and amazing revelation that will change your life. So don't forget to go check that out. I noticed here that Taffy, you shared something that was, I think, very valid as Shauna was talking here. Mm-hmm. She says, I was traumatized with something in my past and I didn't know how to process it. And I didn't know I was valuable, and how I found out all that stuff, how to deal with it, and that I was valuable to overcome it. And so it's amazing because in that place when we are traumatized, this is where all of our memories get stuck, all of our conclusions get formed. And this is where the ego, focuses its lens, in life. And so, it is that past trauma, and so I'm sure you walked through this, Taffy, where you weren't even aware after time had passed. We bury our trauma so much that we're not aware of it from day to day consciously. We're just aware of the present situation in which the people around us, it feels like they don't value us. And so we're all upset when really what they are doing is they are now mirroring what you've believed about yourself, so that you can come out of the trauma that you have no value. And it's a painful process, but as you walk through it, you realize that the fact that you walked through the lie that you had no value actually revealed that you had value. It's almost like one cancels out the other when we just simply allow the process to unfold. And as we come out of that sense of no value, guess what happens? Everybody around us starts valuing us once we realize the purpose of the process of adopting that belief in the first place, what we went through, and what we were actually carrying as a purpose to come out of it. And that it really is all working to bring forth consciousness rather than to hinder it, in the long run.
I just had as you were talking, I had this visual, something I've experienced that kind of helped me realize some stuff. But I realized, I don't know if anybody's ever had like an injury. I had hurt my knee, and I had to take time off of work. I couldn't walk on it. It was inflamed and swollen. It was painful. And eventually I had to do physical therapy. Yeah. And I was afraid to do physical therapy because I didn't want to injure it more. And it felt painful to do physical therapy.
Yeah.
And I remember my mind being like, no, this is hurting me worse. And the physical therapist had to really help me see that in actuality, not using my knee is causing more damage because the tendons are now shrinking and tightening, and you can get all this kinds of stuff happening to your ligaments and your joint if you're not using it or exercising or doing physical therapy. And so realistically, this process that feels like you're traumatizing your trauma is actually breaking up some of the stuff that has been stuck together or concluded on or solidified in your life, that this is just who I am, when in reality it's not. Correct. And so as we do this process in our physical therapy, in a sense, we are strengthening those ligaments and joints and muscles and tendons, and actually helping yourself to begin to move and have it be fluid. And so as you practice this, it does become fluid. Yes. It does become easier. You just become aware. And so I think that is helpful for me in realizing where I am and where I have been and what I've been walking through, that it is painful, but it's actually beautiful at the same time.
Yeah. So you're looking back. So again, the crazy thing is about this is once you deal with the programming, and this is why we do shift. We do shift because it is the preliminary to consciousness. It is the preparation for consciousness.
Right.
Because once we reconcile memory, which is basically past versions of ourselves that have not been able to find solace or a solution or understanding of the things that have happened in their life, and they're coming forth through these triggers. Once we reconcile with the other versions of ourselves through our earthly history, what springs out of that is this beautiful revelation of love, this beautiful revelation of purpose. And it causes the mind to relax. It causes the perception to relax and say, you're okay now. And in that peace and calm, we begin to let go of the distractions of the past. See, as long as you have memories in the past that have emotional pain on them, your mind is not present. It's in the past. And our minds work on association of where they've been in the natural realm, in the realm of the ego, if I can put it that way. And so the mind works on where it's been based in the ego realm. All right. Now, in the realm of consciousness, the mind works on where it's at. And I don't mean where it's at on a journey, but where it's at beholding as though separate a journey of yourself. So you begin to look through the eyes of divinity at your humanity, and there is a love exchange going on here. There is an encouragement and uplifting, as well as strategy and direction. Okay. So this is really what's going on internally in the mind.
Right.
And, I can say over the years that where back in the early years of when I was in ministry in Charismania and the Pentecostal background and movement, before I was, awakened out of that, pastors would constantly reject me and attack me. And I used to always take it as I'm being persecuted for the name of Jesus. They're persecuting me. I must be doing something right. Okay. Now, yeah, sure. I was doing all kinds of wonderful things and there was all kinds of good fruit, but I also had a lot of condemnation, self-evaluation, and my own rejection. And so, God, divinity, higher self, whatever you want to call it, source, does not want to leave you half-baked, and so we're kind of journeying through, and for me, it was journeying through this repercussion externally, which really, when I finally became conscious in that area, it was these pastors were actually helping me. Whether they had their own issues doesn't matter. Whether they were projecting their own pain doesn't matter. What matters is they were rejecting my rejection of myself when I became conscious and realized that that resistance was actually extracting out of me a belief system and allowing me to become conscious in an area I hadn't been conscious before. Right. And so consciousness does not grab hold of thought. Consciousness only embraces the present knowing, living in the present. Let's talk a little bit about living in the now. Obviously, once you've dealt with historical woundedness, your mind is no longer distracted, and it can be present. But what would be a good example of how do you live in the now, honey? When it comes to living in a now embrace, how do you exercise that? And do you have any keys for the people that can get them started?
I think on how to share that a little bit.
Well, you did, but share it again in another way.
Share it again in another way.
Yeah. I mean, you did share on
that.
Yeah,
I kind of already touched on that, like just letting everything come and go.
What if you can't? What do you do when you can't let it go?
Can't let what go?
That you're trying to let it go, but you can't because there's that voice of ego sitting there going, you need to do this, you need to do that. Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Somebody's coming to do this and somebody's coming to do that, And so what do you do when you have all of this distraction?
You have to burn out.
Okay. You have to burn out.
You have to burn out. You keep wearing yourself out until I think multiple times I've burned out of that thought process of tired of doing everything for everyone else and not receiving or having that reciprocation in my own perception. I wasn't receiving what I thought I was getting. And eventually you kind of just forget it. I'm done. Yeah. I give up. I'm not doing anything more. And it's like, that's exactly where you need to be. Yes. And so you kind of have to burn out of doing to just realize you're exhausting yourself and let go. Yes. And say, I'm not fine. And it's usually done in like resentment or anger or frustration first. But then when you realize, one time I was so mad, I was so tired of I was really exhausting myself. And I kept getting these little hints that I should just let it go. You don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. And I'm just like, oh no, if I want it done, I got to do it myself. Nobody else is going to do anything for me. And I'm just doing and doing and doing and performing and striving and exhausting myself. And finally, I think I hit a point where I was like, all right, I'm done. I give up. And I just heard this voice like, all right, good. Now you can learn how to rest.
So you really do have to strive till you can't strive no more. In a sense, it reminds me of what Jesus said when he says that the seed has to go into the ground and die or it abides alone. Okay. And I think because remember, this is his response when the Greeks were coming and they're trying to, yell to Jesus, who's surrounded with people, and the apostles are the bodyguards. And they're like, we want to see Jesus. And, the disciples are like, hey, man, he's busy. He's resting. And Jesus answers and said, unless a corn of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it abides alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. And so what is the dying of the seed? It's the breaking of the shell, right? And that comes through the elements, the environment, the weather, the dirt, being buried. I don't know about you, but I think we've all experienced what it feels like to be buried or to be restrained or to be unseen, okay, hidden. And hidden in a bunch of muck and dirt and bugs and everything else, right? If you can imagine being a seed, what a seed would go through, you can really relate that to things that you've walked through in your life, right? But here's the thing, if it was designed that this was not personal, what if none of that was really personal, no matter how personal you took it or how personal other people took it, but that everything in your life was designed to wake you up, and that it wasn't about this thing being a bad thing, and it would be better if it was this thing to wake me up instead of that thing. Instead of kind of dividing up our lives, coming into that place in which and I think there's a pre-posture of the posture. So the posture of consciousness, of observation and awareness, we don't begin there.
No.
We begin with walking through all of this resistance in our minds,
exhaustion,
and thinking we have to perform to do something to get somewhere. And I think if we can realize that everything we're performing, that we can't stop performing, and everything that we're striving in, that no matter how much we concentrate and confess and decree, we can't stop striving, is to just kind of get that one little perspective, that little opening of consciousness that says, oh, I'm walking through this to disarm the mind that is preventing me from experiencing the truth of consciousness. So let's just go for it.
So in reality, stop resisting things that you think are resisting you.
Yes.
If we learn, and that was another key, is stop trying to fix everything and be everything for everyone else. And I started to look for what brought me joy and excitement and peace and love. And I think if we can do that, kind of like the whole airplane analogy of, they always say, put the oxygen on yourself before you put the oxygen on, your children. And so in reality, if we can find those things and actually learn to enjoy life, because that's what the heck we're here for, is to find these enjoyments and happiness within ourselves. I think we're always looking for external things to make us happy, and then resisting those things that we feel like are stopping us from having peace and joy and love. But what if we just let everything just be as is, which is what consciousness is, just an observer.
Yes.
So if you can just observe and let everything flow in and out of you, it becomes a little bit easier. And again, you don't start there. But I think the more we take this life as a precious time of enjoyment, and it doesn't have to, we don't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it's not about having money to have enjoyment.
Yeah.
That's a lie.
Money isn't happiness.
No.
It helps. But it isn't happiness.
But it doesn't mean you have to have money to go spend thousands of dollars on a trip to go find peace and joy. Sometimes it's stop doing what you're doing with work and taking that time off to go do something that you enjoy. Go to the beach, put your feet in the grass, enjoy nature,
Love
go
yourself.
for a walk.
Love yourself.
The littlest of things to just find that peace and joy is also being in the moment.
Yeah.
And I think the more we do things that fill up our love tank, the easier it is to just be in the moment with others around you.
Yes.
And you're not, tossed to and fro based upon what people do or don't do for you, because you're doing for you, and it fills up your tank.
Definitely.
And then being around other people is going to do that exact same thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to add to what you are already consciously aware of.
Yes.
And so I think one thing, if anything, is do things for yourself that bring you peace, love, and joy.
Yes.
Find that out.
Exactly.
And if you don't know, because there was a time where it was like, God asked me, what do you desire? And I'm like, whoa, I don't even know what the heck I desire.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the heck makes me happy. I was so busy people pleasing and doing what other people, again, what I thought other people wanted me to do or what I needed to do for others, that I didn't even know what made me happy. I didn't even know what brought me joy. I didn't even know what, and ultimately the bigger picture is being around people brings me joy.
Yes.
But it had to be filtered through me loving myself.
Yes.
And then once I began to love myself, then I can be around others and not deal with the projections that they may have. I could just see it for what it is.
Yes.
And I don't have to resist it. I don't have to protect myself. I can just be.
That's right. It's so, ultimately, when we start out this journey, we learn the program, we accept lies we believed about ourselves. We then begin to journey out, coming to full term, in which we walk through retaliation and consequences through those lens of woundedness that now begins to slap that ego into subjection to consciousness. And I know there's a scripture in Proverbs that say, blows that hurt cleanse away evil, as do stripes the inner depths of the heart. And what that is saying is that when you feel like you're being whipped around by everything around you, or even by your own head, there's actually a purging going on that's going to bring a deeper revelation and understanding of I believe, the purpose for why you walk through that. and purpose is everything. And so it's like once we kind of get through dealing with that historical woundedness and transmuting some of those emotionally based memories, what happens is we begin to become available where we weren't available to ourselves. We begin to do that. And so ultimately it is loving yourself. And when you love yourself, there is nothing you need to prove to anyone. And so you simply begin to read between the lines what is going on. You begin to discern intentions. And I don't mean negative intentions. You might see somebody has the wrong intentions in what they're doing, but you also see why they do. You see that, well, they have the wrong intentions because they are wounded here. They have fear. They have anxiety. They're still needing to prove themselves. Okay. And so you're able to go around that wall in their heart and meet them at a certain place while also utilizing wisdom to where you're not taken advantage of. But really, you won't be taken advantage of because you're conscious.
Right.
See, it's when you're not conscious that you feel like you're taken advantage of. And so it's not a protection. It's a wisdom that allows you to be what needs to be for that person.
Right.
Okay. Being all things for one another doesn't come because I'm trying real hard not to get murdered, or I better only be this because I don't want retaliation here. We shouldn't really be concerned with if we open a can of worms and out of consciousness that somehow, I just don't want people to trip out on that. Okay. I mean, there's a time. Jesus said this, there are many things I want to tell you, but you can't bear them now. So obviously being able to relate to where somebody is at and what they're able to receive, and being able to go only that far with them. Okay. But you're doing that from a place of your own completeness, because consciousness is a revelation of completeness. Okay. When I become conscious, I realize now that everything I journeyed through was really glory. Really wasn't suffering. My present suffering just looked like present suffering because I hadn't woken up. But when I wake up, I realize it's the glory revealed in us. It's what brought us to that place. And it's awesome. And I wouldn't change a thing. Okay. Wherever we need to go back and regret, and if we had the opportunity to change anything in our past, we would change it. That's a place of regret. That place of regret is because we haven't discerned the purpose for why we walk through it that has brought us to this awakening of how we now perceive the journey. Okay. And so when you are conscious, there is no regret. When you are conscious, you wouldn't change anything you did, because if you did, you might not be awake today.
Right.
Okay. It's really a beautiful thing. So we're trying to break this down more into something that is applicable in life rather than just something up in the clouds, because there is the consciousness of the eternal. There is the consciousness of the mystical. There is, the heavenly realms and the consciousness of that and the supernatural. Okay. But like, for instance, when we talked about the third dimension and how that has been created in our mind through memory, through ego, through programming, we are living in a illusionary reality known as the third dimensional grid,
Right.
And so what happens is when we live in the third dimension, we're controlled by the fourth, and the fourth dimension of time, controls us. So now we feel driven. We're losing time. We got to hurry up. We're running out of time. We want to be on time.
Right.
We don't want to waste our time. And I think there is a place for that to a degree. But once it begins to move in this anxiety, in this fear and stuff like this, it's now exposing. So time becomes the exposer of regret. Time becomes an element that begins to help us. But in the beginning of it, it doesn't feel like help. It feels like we're losing time.
It feels like suffering.
Feels like a waste of time.
Yeah.
But as we wake up, we redeem the time, and then we begin to master time. Okay. And, so in a third dimension, we're kind of subject to time. But once we cross over and we begin to become conscious of the intentions, the purpose of the journey, then what happens is we begin to redeem the time by redeeming our history and removing regret. And in that, it brings us not only into the present, but it begins to prepare us for a fifth density or fifth dimensional reality in which now we can manipulate time. Okay, we can stop time, and we can accelerate life in the midst of time. Mm-hmm. And this is the years that the cankerworm has eaten, the restoration of time, right?
Right.
And
because we're not bound by time.
Because we are not bound by time.
You're not limited by time.
That's right. Time is an illusion based in a third dimensional perspective that is not your reality. It's an adopted mindset that the generations have adopted, and there was a purpose in that, and a purpose through the hardship realm of separation and time has actually been the elements used to break open the seed, break open the shell of your life, and cause that which is within to be revealed. Okay, and so this is where all things are working together, for good, right? It's all working together for good. And so, we're moving now in this time and in this season into a 5D reality. And I truly believe in the 5D, and there is no such thing as sickness or disease. There is no such thing as, loss or lack. That is a third dimensional perspective. And, the third dimensional perspective, you cannot manifest miracles in a third dimensional perspective in and of yourself to get to the 5D. But once the veil is removed and you're in a 5D, that's where, or especially when you're in between, you're still kind of operating a 3D, but your mind's stepping into a 5D. You start to, it looks like you're getting miracles in your third dimension, that right. The 3D is being redeemed. No, but the 3D is actually being done away with. And so it's bleeding through another dimensional space of consciousness in which we are aware of reality that is bleeding through into our third dimensional illusion. And so now what we do is we try to plant in a third dimension and call that being practical. And then we try to make miracles happen there. And that's why they're short-lived. That's why the fruit doesn't remain, because the miraculous is in the 5D mindset.
It kind of reminds me of the concept that we used to say of we're bringing heaven to earth.
Yes.
But in actuality, that's still a 3D realm, the separation. But when you flip it over, you realize earth is heaven. We are heaven.
Yes.
And it shifts to a greater reality of consciousness. But it's funny how when you believe you're separate, you now have to attain something, bring it into where you are. But when you flip it over, it just is a reality.
It just
like
is.
How people say, like the miraculous just is.
Yes.
It is us. It's just ours. It's, I don't know. I just thought about that when because remember we said, we're bringing down heaven to earth. And it's like, oh no. Yeah. It is so much more, so much bigger than what we had once thought.
See, we will fade in and out. Okay. So a lot of times when you get your breakthrough and you've been in a third dimension perspective, your breakthrough was a 5D encounter. Okay. It was a 5D. So the 5D isn't about miracles. The 5D is about reality. And so when we're in a 3D looking for miracles, it's because we don't understand reality. Okay. Miracles actually don't exist in the way in which we think.
Right.
Miracles aren't coming to invade your third dimensional grid. You're waking up to consciousness in 5D as you're still struggling to come out of a third dimensional lifestyle. Okay. So they're literally converging at times or hitting up against each other. And we think, I got my breakthrough. No, you actually became aware of reality for a moment. Okay. So really we need to stop trying to get a miracle, and we need to simply transition into reality where wholeness is reality. And so, and I've experienced this where I've walked in 3D body memory but yet my mind was accessing 5D consciousness, but my cellular structure, my biology, and the memory in my body had not caught up with the reality that my consciousness was taking hold of or embracing. And so we will move in and out of reality just like we're blinking. in and out of this dimension. I mean, science has been saying this for
Right.
years, that you can't see it, but at like, what is it? Not a second, but what do you call it? It's not called a microsecond, but what is it called? Nanosecond. All right. And you're blinking like so many hundreds of times every nanosecond in and out of this dimension. You're blinking. Okay. And so what that means is you are a projected image. And if you're a projected image in a third dimensional belief system, then you're actually not in a 3D world. You're actually in a 5D world, blinking into a 3D world based on a conclusion of illusion, which is a delusion.
We're in a VR game.
We are. It's a virtual reality. So really the virtual reality goggles is your 3D realm.
Right.
Okay. And so, here's the thing. We will blink in and out, and we will have what we call seasons. Seasons of breakthrough, seasons of the dark night of the soul. Well, the seasons of the dark night of the soul is your 3D conclusion, and the seasons of your breakthrough is actually the reality in which you are projecting into the third dimension, a clue of where you've already been living, but you're still glitching in the matrix at this point.
That's what Nico just said.
Yeah, still glitching in the matrix. That's right. And so what happens is we think we lost our miracle. We think, oh man, how do I get back to
right,
wholeness, or how do I, get my miracle again? And again, we're operating in the wrong perspective here. Okay, so it takes time to master reality. Okay, so we start out blinking in and out of reality, and we're actually doing this physically in the third dimension. We're doing this in our mindset consciously. So we're blinking at multiple levels here. But once we kind of settle into that fifth dimensional reality, we find that everything begins to level out. And so we're going to blink, and that blink can be seen as resistance, as instability. You blinking in and out physically has an effect on how you perceive your life in a third dimension compared to a 5D realm. Okay. A 5D realm is the realm of oneness. We've talked about this before, and we're going to hopefully get into more detail as we unlock this ourselves, keys. Because what we're doing to get the information we're bringing to you is we're taking a look at our own journey and how did we get from point A to point B in this awareness of consciousness and gathering these keys. Okay. And so just like Nico just said, spirit of error, remember that Bible verse, spirit or mindset of glitches. That's right. It says it in 1 John about the spirit of the world or the spirit that's from God, the spirit of error or the spirit of truth. And truth flows and really there's more than just the fifth density here. But it's the only verbiage we have to describe a level of oneness and completeness in which every negative thing that would be attacking your, that would be supposedly coming against you now becomes an asset to you and a point of contact to awaken you into a deeper reality. I mean, if you can imagine the way Jesus operated in a fifth dimensional mindset, all right, he's the Son of Man that came from heaven and is in heaven. Okay. So he wasn't trying to get to heaven. He wasn't on a pursuit of God. He was on an embrace and a reality of divinity that was ever living in that place, but reaching in where everybody else was still operating at a lower frequency of a third dimensional illusion. Right. Okay. And so that's where, like Nico says, you say there is time and season. So there are times and seasons in the third dimensional, which is us learning to graduate from the third dimension through the sowing and reaping and consequences and timeline based perception that becomes our schoolmaster to cause us to throw in the towel through, dark nights of the soul.
Right.
That begins to strip the veils of conclusion so that we can begin to realize that, hey, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, right? And it's almost like we think we're so breakable, that we're so cautious and so self-protected that we put ourselves in a corner. We corner ourselves. We enter into this our own dead end street that we've set up for ourselves. But all of this is actually being used to break us out of the illusion of the third dimension. That's very limited to the sweat of our brow, to our own performance to measure up, to all of our culturally based religions. I mean, if I was to tell you that your third dimensional grid created your own God and created your own religion, which is really just another Tower of Babel, and that a lot of the religions of the world have based their definition of God on a third dimensional conclusion of a lesser view of life and who you truly are, then what we could say is that our thoughts created God. And it's the God of the third dimension. And the God of the third dimension,
the God of our own making,
is a sky God, a God outside of us, which means it's a God you pursue. Okay. And so, really, when you think about what is the pursuit of God, the pursuit of God is the lie of separation, in which I now need to find God and become one with God as though I've been separated from God.
Right.
And so rather than the pursuit of God, it's now the realization of that which is divine or that which is consciousness. And so divinity is really consciousness, and consciousness is really who you are at the depths of the essence of your being. Would you like to say anything about that? Or about whatever you want to say?
Well, in a shorter condensed version, 3D is the lie of separation, the ego, the suffering, pain, which is all being used to lead you in a sense to the 4D, which is the time, which is redeeming time, kind of like what you were saying.
Redeeming the 3D.
Redeeming 3D using the power of hindsight, the realizations, the epiphanies, all of that stuff is redemption of time, which leads you to the awareness or the consciousness of the 5D, which has always been. It isn't just happening because you're aware of it. It has always been.
It's who you are looking into the 3D.
You're waking up to that reality of the 5D.
Yes.
So it's a progression of awakening in a sense. And again, all of these are just labels to help you connect with your journey, but
we're still in the label season.
But ultimately, there's no word or label to even hold on to. It just is. The I am that I am. It just is.
Let's do it. An example of 5D would not be us trying to tell you where you're at. To teach on 5D would look at each other and go, wow. Did you get that?
Yes.
Wasn't that awesome?
Yes.
There's your 5D explanation.
All right.
It is bearing witness to the truth without having to do anything to get there. It is a quantumly entangled realization and reality. It's kind of like the Matrix, okay? In the Matrix, as long as you're asleep in a pod and plugged in, you don't know that there's anything outside of that Matrix, okay? But what happened when Neo came out of that and he realized, what did Morpheus say? Welcome to the real world, Neo.
Right.
And he entered that other world. Once he was trained in what the reality he was actually living in, what happened is he was able to go sit in his seat and plug into the Matrix anytime he wanted to without becoming entangled in the Matrix. And this is why we return to the third dimensional mindset group of people is we're going to plug in. But see, because I already know Kung Fu, and I already know that I'm awake, I can now go back into the third dimension without becoming entangled in it to help demonstrate, which to those in the third dimension are saying, man, that guy can move in miracles. I want to get close to that guy. He's been to heaven. He's encountered this. Because in the third dimension, they think you had to go somewhere. Okay. But what you're doing is you're actually just mirroring where they actually have been living, but aren't aware of.
Right.
And your manifestation, or you being a manifestor of consciousness, as you plug back into the Matrix and you go in and you say, you're on the phone with, the machine world, and you're like, I'm gonna show these people what it's all about, and you begin to fly in front of them, you begin to manifest in front of them. It begins to wake them up. They begin to become unplugged from that system. And so, man, I'm feeling just this realm of just bliss And Shaka Bam Bam. I'm just feeling this. Neo Morales. That's it. Shaka Bam Bam. Oh, man. That's right. So, you're just reminding people where they've always been. And so, we do that in increments, and we don't do it all at once. This is what's beautiful about it, is we're not required to bring like everything we're sharing today to each person. Sit down, let me tell you what it's all about. No, somebody has a situation in their life that has brought them to a place where they have a need. And that need has brought them to a place of an interaction. And that interaction is specific to that need in the beginning. And you are simply inviting people piece by piece through loving them, through really caring about where people are at. And so, when you're in the 5D, you're not like, I'm above all that. You just need to grow up and quit being a whiner and come out of your 3D. No, that's not actually how you're going to get people to wake up. What you're going to do is you're going to meet them where they're at because you were there. And you're going to have compassion because you realize the purpose of walking through it was because you actually were in love with this person. And I don't mean intimately, like romantically in love, but when you realize you meet people that are where you were once at, that you're free from, you realize that who you are in the very essence of your being so loved that person that you were willing to walk through it so that you could be an asset to their life and be a revelation of who they are in your current state, where they are trying to get to, or where they are gazing to get to. And so now, you realize everybody that you meet, that you relate to because they're presently going through the pain that you once went through, gives you the epiphany of now you know why you went through that. And it begins to release this love realm. Okay. And you are able to love people at such a place. And you're grateful that you were entrusted with such a task in the first place, which shows that you were entrusted, which means you were believed in by consciousness, by source, by God, by Father, okay, by higher self, however you want to say that. It's all the same thing, okay? You'd be surprised what God looks like when all the cultural view of God is stripped off of you, and you see him you see him that isn't a him or a her. It's not even an it. You no longer have language to put to it, but you realize that the best way to explain God outside of the cultural coverings is consciousness. It's consciousness becoming conscious of the unconscious that he purposely made subconscious to have an expression of consciousness to verify that which was conscious of itself. Okay?
Say that 5 times.
Yes. And so you got to realize, consciousness as the divinity of God chose to be subconscious, to hide unconsciousness of himself as consciousness within that subconscious state, and to journey it out as an expression so that consciousness would stay conscious. If your God is consciousness without all the densities and dimensions of interaction in terrestrial form and celestial form, if you take all that away, you don't have consciousness. And so consciousness without expression is darkness. It's dormant, it's unconscious. And so, this is why we have all of this circular flow, and it is very circular, and it is seasonal. Seasonal within these densities, but consciousness is that which is eternal, gazing in upon itself to reciprocate its own consciousness. And so it's a snowball effect that continues to unveil and manifest. So yeah. That'll make your head spin. We're going to try to do a couple more of these. We will be out of town this next week, so we won't be seeing you on next Saturday.
Thursday.
Next Thursday and Saturday, actually. We will be out of town. If we can do a pre-recorded and throw it out there and place it out there for you before then.
But it's not as much fun.
It's not as much fun because we like to interact with everybody here. But we will try to throw some little nugget out there to keep you going. But then we're going to go out to Florida and see some friends this next week. But we'll be back the following week to be right back on schedule again. But we will, if we can, we'll throw a pre-recorded on here for you. Something we can maybe put on there while we're on the road, or or before we head out. Maybe we can do something. Maybe we'll try.
We'll see.
But no promises. Either way,
actually,
stay conscious.
You didn't see this in the comments, but Nico was asking if you wanted to do one together for part 3.
Oh, that would be great. Where did he put that?
It was like way up there.
Way up there. Yes, Nico. Reach out to me, bro. Let's do a part 3. So it won't be this next Thursday or Saturday. It'll be the following week. So do you have a calendar? Do we have a calendar here?
We can do it later.
Let me just make sure that I have this squared away for everyone, so that everybody knows when we're coming back on, and we can just announce it now. Are you good on a Saturday, Nico? We could do a Saturday. I think that would be good. So it would actually be the 25th, right? Mm-hmm. So Saturday, the 25th, if that works for Nico, the 3 of us are going to do it together on part 3 on, yep. Okay.
Let's do it.
And on part 3 on consciousness.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's going to be, actually, that'll be part 4 on consciousness. Part 3, we're going to do on.
No.
We'll be back by then.
No.
The 23rd, we won't be back? Yeah, we'll be back the 23rd.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we will be having it the 23rd again and the 25th. The 23rd, Sean and I will do it. The 25th, we'll have Nico on there. So it'll be the 4th. It'll be the 4th one on consciousness.
Either way, it'll be fun.
And I can't wait, Nico, because I know Nico has some stuff that's been revealed to him that hasn't been revealed to us. And that doesn't take away from each other's consciousness. That reveals that each of us has a aspect and a diversity of that consciousnness that only works as fullness in our togetherness.
Yes.
And so consciousness is oneness, that each person that isn't an individual, but a diversity of the whole, carries a specific expression that in our togetherness, it is fullness as oneness, for only oneness is fullness. Okay.
Right.
And so yeah, it is going to be good. So I can't wait, Nico. You reach out to me, man, and you let me know what's on your heart. Maybe a subject that you'd like to hit. I want to say the next one we do, we kind of wanted to come in with, sorry about that. That's the wind blowing outside. If you're hearing some vibration, it's also maybe the wind blowing inside and the vibration. But we were thinking along the lines of reincarnation.
I love how you include me in this in front of everybody.
Well, we talked about it in the other room.
And I was like,
and she's like, no. But I wanted to kind of look at consciousness through reincarnation, because and take a different side to that, So you know what? We'll save that one for Nico. Are you good with that, Nico? You want to do one on how the cloud of witness and reincarnation, and how that is actually what that is, and how it flows in 5D compared to 3D? Because I think we've got a lot of teaching on the 3rd dimensional view of reincarnation, but we haven't had a 5D view. And what does life look like on planet Earth in a 5D view as well of reincarnation? So I think we'll do that one with Nico. And so we don't know what we're going to say Thursday before Saturday. So it's going to be a surprise.
We just talk about it 5 minutes before we get on, and we're like, all right, let's do this with nothing to say. That's what makes it fun when you have people engaging with you, because
exactly,
we're all together.
Yes. So to answer you, Shauna Leeser, it's going to be the 25th of February. We'll be going live on the 4th installment on consciousness.
The 4th installment
with Nico Morales, and it will be on reincarnation.
Yes, we need
5D reincarnation.
Yes, reincarnation. It just gives me such a funky little
well, because of what we came out of.
Yes, well, not only that, like just the limited kind of stuff you hear about it that is almost even can be religious.
Yeah.
You know, and
well, I encountered reincarnation.
Yes, we'll talk about that later.
We'll talk about it. So I'll save that for Nico. But so I'm looking forward to it. And you guys are amazing. I love you guys. Shauna, it's good to see you. It's good to see all those that came on today. Lisa, love you. We love you guys. You guys are amazing. Wendy, we love you. We love John and Annabelle. Everyone. Estella, I just don't want to miss people. Kathy. Paul, we love you, brother. You guys are amazing. You guys are always building us up. You know, you are the proof of our apostleship just by being here. And we are written in each other's hearts as living epistles. Robert, we love you. And we just appreciate each and every one of you, and we're just so thankful for you. And we're gonna have a vacation now. For those that we will be doing the Friday night at 5 p.m. Zoom meeting in our shift training.
Right.
If you've got the course, Shauna, you got the course, Shauna Leeser. And maybe you didn't see my post on that, so I didn't add you. Do you want me to add you to the coach training? Thankfully, we just did our second Zoom where we're discussing and activating and putting on the training, the video training. And so Shauna Leeser, if you want me to, okay, well, I'll have Shauna add you. And you can just go up through there, watch the last two Zooms. They are recorded. So, and it's more information than the training. And we will be getting together. Since we just started this, we will take a break in Florida and go in another room and do the Friday Zoom at 5 p.m. Eastern time for the shift coach training. Okay. But we won't be on live on Facebook or YouTube this next week, but we'll see you the following week. Okay, guys? We love you guys and appreciate you, and have a wonderful week, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Love y'all. Bye-bye for now. You want to say goodbye?
Bye, everybody.